Well, hey, my name's Curt, and we are so excited you're tuning in with us today as we continue the series Starting Over. And today, we're going to be talking about the blame game because let's be honest, we've all been on both sides of the blame game, and the one thing we know is that no one has ever blamed their way to a better future. So, I hope you'll stick around. Now, before we get to that, we would love to connect with you, and the best way to do that is to simply scan the QR code, fill out the form next to the stream or the QR code, take a moment, tell us about yourself, and if it's your first time with us, we would love to send you a gift this week in the mail just for joining us because we think checking out church for the first time is kind of a big deal, so we're glad you're here. All right, lots of ways to connect around here, whether you're new, whether you've been around for a while, maybe you're looking for some new connections, some new purpose, or just looking for some opportunities to have some fun. We've got all that coming your way. In fact, March Madness is here. And Crosspoint, we're getting ready here to have all the madness kind of flowing through this place. And there's two different ways that we want to invite you to participate. In fact, first is doing some good with your brackets. Crosspoint Student Ministries is sponsoring the 2024 March Madness Bracket Challenge, and this is a chance for you to do good, to have some fun, to win some prizes. All the proceeds are going to help our students attend the International Youth Convention of the Church of God later this summer in Orlando, Florida, so check that out. And then on Thursday, March 21st, we want to invite you to the March Madness viewing party right here at the Crosspoint campus in the Commons. There's going to be free Ale Emporium appetizers all day long, games on the screens, and of course, some fellow fans to celebrate this great day. Now, for those of you tuning in online, this is one of those moments we would love to hang out with you. So we'd love for you to join us for part of the day, all day, hang out, watch some basketball, work, or just watch, meet some people. And if you want to hang around for the Thursday evening early weekend service, we'll cap it off with a March Madness after party, and it's all happening right here at the Crosspoint campus. Now, Easter. Let's talk Easter. Easter's coming to Crosspoint. It's actually coming to the whole world. Here at Crosspoint, March 28th and 31st. And as always, there's lots of ways to connect with Easter here at Crosspoint, including the Thursday early weekend service. That'll be our first of 3 services, plus our 2 Sunday morning services on March 31st. And we'll be online all day Sunday and throughout the week. So make your plans now. Think about who you want to invite to come sit with you or perhaps to come watch with you for Easter at Crosspoint. Now, speaking of Easter, one more thing. One of the things that makes Easter at Crosspoint so amazing is ordinary people like you. You know, all the things that happen around here, it happens through ordinary, normal heroes, serving coffee, welcoming people at the front doors, being game changers in our kids' environments, maybe leading a small group of kids in our preschool environment, elementary environment. And so this is one of the chances for you to be a hand raiser. And so if you'd like to join a heroic team of big-hearted volunteers and make some good things happen for other people this Easter, let us know, and we will be in touch with you. All right, we have a great service for you today. And to get things started, we got a great song from the band Imagine Dragons that reminds us that even when things don't turn out the way that we want, God can use those things to point us toward a better future. So here's Brad and the Crosspoint Band with the song Thunder.
Just a young gun with a quick fuse. I was uptight, wanna let loose. I was dreaming of bigger things and wanna leave my old life behind. Not a yes sir, not a follower. Fit the box, fit the mold, have a seat in the foyer. Take a number. I was lightning, but for the thunder. Kids are laughing in my classes while I was scheming for the masses. Who do you think you are? Dreaming about being a big star. Say you're basic, you say you're easy. You're always riding in the backseat. Now I'm smiling from the stage while you were clapping in the nosebleeds. feel the thunder, lightning and the thunder. Thunder, 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 feel the thunder, lightning and the thunder.
All right, let's make some noise for this band this weekend. Man, some great music. Hey, go ahead and grab a seat, man. Welcome to Cross Points. Good to have you with us today. My name's Curt, and let's make some noise for those joining us online this weekend. So excited to have you join us across our city, our state, our nation, even our world. And if you're here for the first time with us, whether online, in the room, we're excited to have you with us this weekend. We're in week 3 of a series called Starting Over. And we're talking about how to ensure the next time is better than the last time. And so if you're in a season, or maybe you're starting a season where you are starting something over, whether that be a career or a company, or maybe your marriage is, just on a pause and you're thinking that is probably in the rearview mirror, maybe, another relationship, something academically, financially, whatever it is, we want to talk about how to make sure the best next time's better than the last time. And God actually gives us some tools on this. Now, last week, we looked at a number of things. One thing we looked at is how we often learn lessons in the areas that matter the least, and we learn a lot more slowly in the areas that seem to matter the most. And this was kind of interesting. I walked into the office this week, and our team was putting together kind of a text-in program that you're going to actually have the chance to participate in later today. And they were just all laughing. And I was like, hey, what's going on? And they were talking about how there were some messages that came in through our texting system. If you are a part of that, you sometimes get texts from us. And apparently people reply to these. And so we had all these replies we hadn't seen. And so they were showing me what these looked like. And we had a whole bunch of people. You may have been some of them that were like, hey, I'm not Adam. And somebody else was like, who's Adam? I mean, it was like countless, like numerous, all the way from students to, people who were like older. And we were like, what in the world is going on? Like, do we have data that's backwards? And then we started going back and looking at the dates, and we went back to see what we sent on that day. And here was the text that we sent. We said, hey, Merry Christmas, Adam. Because like Adam comes before Eve, and so when we do Christmas Eve services, we call it Christmas Adam, right, Eric? And so, and so we were like, okay, we won't do that again, because that's not really a big deal. But we tend to learn in the areas that actually really don't matter that much. But for whatever reason, we're slower in learning in areas that matter the most. So we're going to take a look today at 3 things. We're going to begin to look at 3 things over the next 3 weeks, 3 processes, 3 really exercises that we have to engage in if we want to make sure the next time is better than the last time. And I think these are going to be really helpful to us. I know it's been helpful to me as we evaluate our experiences. And so we're going to look at one today and then the next 2 over the next couple weeks. And so I'm going to give all 3 of them to you today so you just kind of know where we're going. So we're going to talk today about owning it. And then next week we're going to talk about how to rethink it. And then we're going to look at what it means to release it. And so just to make sure we're all on the same page and you're not falling asleep already, let's just say these out loud. You guys ready? We're going to do what? We're going to own it, and then second week we're going to rethink it. Third week we're going to release it. Yes. So today we're going to talk about owning it. And this is the most important because this is where we start. And if we don't start here, then we're really not going to be able to make progress on the next ones. And so here's what we mean by owning it. Owning it is when we say, in order to assure that your past doesn't repeat itself, you have to own your role in your past. Meaning, in order to make sure that your past doesn't creep slowly into your present or creep fast into your future, we have to make sure we own our part, that we own, our part, our responsibility, our part in the disaster, whatever, it might be that we're starting over in, whether that's professionally or relationally or, in some way in our career or finances. And so to kind of help us get into this, owning our past, we like to blame our way toward our future, and we know that never works. And blaming is interesting, and sometimes we just have to be honest. And so we have to be honest about our part in it. And I want to show you a little scene because sometimes we just have to laugh. And this is one of our favorite comedians. You guys want to hear from one of our favorite comedians around here, Nate Bargatze? All right, I wonder if he ever gets old, but apparently not. So here's his little take on how we sometimes tend to blame. Come on, we want to blame everything else, right? Sometimes we don't want to actually acknowledge the obvious. And, it's easier to blame. It's easier to say, oh, it wasn't my fault. I mean, I didn't know that, he had a gambling problem. I didn't know that, he was into sports betting. I didn't know that, she had this habit. I mean, nobody told me this. I mean, it's not my fault. I mean, the teacher, he just had it out for me, since the beginning. And so, we just have this tendency to look outward, and the reason we don't pause and kind of look at our role in the past, in our own history, is there's something in you, there's something in me that honestly, we just want to tell a better story, right? We don't want to tell the story that, it is like, okay, well, honestly, I just kind of screwed up. I mean, that's just not a very fun story. It's not a very sexy story. Nobody really wants to hear that story, right? And so we want to tell the story of like how unfair they were. Can you believe what they did to me? Can you believe, how dishonest they were? And so the big idea that we really have to, unpack if we want to move forward and make the next time better is that we have to understand that you can't blame your way into a better future. And our best bet for a more successful future is actually to own our piece in our past. Now, I want to look at a great illustration on this and help us just kind of understand some things. And one of the best places we can look to kind of see how this plays out and how it's really affected you and I and every person in humanity is a story that we find in the Old Testament part of the Bible. And one of the things we see in this is you and I come by this naturally. All right, and so if you're a citizen in the human race, which we all are, then it's in you to just naturally blame people and to blame circumstances and to ignore our part in our past. And the reason I think that we're so good at this is because we're related to two biblical characters by the name of Adam and Eve. And so, look at that. Some props to our graphics team right there. Great little scene, Adam and Eve. Adam and Eve, they actually, we get a picture of like our history in their story. And so I want to tell you a bit about this. And if you grew up in church, you probably know the story of Adam and Eve, and you're probably like, hey, I'm cool with that. I believe it. I understand. I don't have any problem with it. If you didn't grow up in church, or if you had a history or English class like I did, and it was kind of like taught like this is actually just mythic, a myth, and it's literature that isn't really accurate, but it's a great story, then you might struggle a bit with this story. Or if you did grow up in church, but you grew up in a system that was pretty narrow in terms of science and God and, young creationist, mentality where the Earth's only 5,000 or 6,000 years old. And you're like, yeah, but what about science? I mean, science tells us otherwise. And I got to check my brain at the door if I'm going to believe that. You probably struggle a bit with this story, and I totally understand that. I would say that's actually not your fault. I'm sorry that you had that experience. And so here's the amazing thing about this story, though. Whether you think this is a myth or not, I mean, you might be going, gosh, this cool church with like lights and a cool band, and we're going to talk about Adam and Eve, really? Like, haven't we moved past them? You don't have to believe the story. It's just that there are incredible insights in this ancient literature on human nature. And again, whether you think it's inspired by God or not, or you think it's just a myth that is kind of describing the way that perhaps creation came about, either way, this story is pretty incredible. And so I want us to kind of take a look at it and see what we learn about ourselves from this little section in the first book in the Bible called Genesis. And so we're going to hit a couple big pieces, and then we're going to get to the main part that I want us to look at today. So here's what it says, Genesis 1:27. It says, so God created mankind in his own image. And that first phrase is just loaded with all kinds of stuff right there. There's a lot packed into that. In the image of God, he created them, male and female, he created them. Now, we just have to remember right here that this was back in the day where everything in the world was exactly the way God wanted it. All right, this is Garden of Eden. This is before sin came in. This is before anything got tainted, before anything, got all jacked up. And so when we even see this phrase, like there's male and female, God created them, it's just not that, simple anymore. I mean, back then, and when everything was the way it was, supposed to be, we didn't have people that were born with heart defects and born with, with cancer already in their body and struggling with, gender and sexual identity issues, all these things, because God said, hey, this is where it is, but we live in a world that's not exactly that way. And we're going to see a bit of the story and how we kind of got to this place. And so he goes on and he says, God blessed them and he said to them, be fruitful and increase in number. And so I'm sure Adam was kind of like, yeah, but isn't there more than that? I mean, aren't we supposed to do more? He's like, what about the 10 Commandments? And God's like, well, listen, that's going to come like hundreds of years from now. Don't worry about it. Just run around, have babies, enjoy yourself, get naked, enjoy. Like just, reproduce, multiply, have fun. Didn't exactly go that way in God's words, but that's kind of the general, summary of it right there. And so here's what's fascinating, though, about this little moment right here in the Garden of Eden. There was only one rule in the garden. And I don't, you couldn't have made this up. This is just the way it kind of started right here. God said, hey, you see that tree over there? And Adam and Eve were like, yeah, we see the tree. And he's like, all right, here's the one thing. Just don't eat any fruit from that tree. That's it. I mean, you can eat anything else you want to eat. You can do whatever you want to do, run around, reproduce, have fun, multiply, build a family, take this place somewhere, steer it, cultivate the garden. But just one rule. And the one rule kind of identifies that God, as the leader, I'm going to establish kind of the way things work, because he's like, I created everything and I know the way it's supposed to go. And it's not a hard rule, just don't eat from the one tree. And of course, they did exactly what we do and what we did when we were kids. They gravitated to the one thing, the two things, that God said, hey, don't do this. We just have a tendency to gravitate to that. And so here's what I think is just so crazy about this story, is that in the beginning, when God had everything exactly the way he wanted it, he only needed one rule. And there wasn't any need for anything else. And he's like, all right, this is it. And they're like, okay, we're going to do that because, you seem to understand the way things are to work, so we'll follow that. And God's like, great, if that's how it's going to be, this is all that you need to worry about. And then, before long, Adam and Eve broke the one rule. And here's basically what God said about that. He said, basically, when they broke that one rule, then everything got messed up. You got messed up. I got messed up. I mean, all humankind is on the downline of that moment. I mean, this is the moment when sin, or when the world all of a sudden isn't the way that God designed it to be. And from that day forward, we're on the downline of that. Now, I know you may not believe that whole story, or you may struggle to say, I don't know if I really believe in sin, but let's be honest. I mean, we all, I think, can admit that, like, hey, we missed the mark at times. I mean, even if you don't like the word sin, I mean, sin literally means that I'm just missing the mark of like God's best design for my life. And if that's offensive, let me just remind you, like, we miss our own marks all the time, right? So like we can't even keep our own rules. Like we say, hey, I'm going to work out 3 times this week, and we don't. We're like, yeah, man, I'm going to sleep in today. Or I'm going to eat healthy all week long, and then we end up ordering something very unhealthy. Or we say, man, I'm just not going to say any more unkind things to people. I mean, we grieve over the things we say. We're like, I am so sorry. I didn't mean to hurt you that way. And then we go and do it again. And so, I mean, we break our own rules. And so, I mean, we don't need like the creator of the universe to remind us that there's something wrong with us. There's something wrong with you or with me. We just naturally don't always do what we think and we know we should do. And God calls it sin. So you can call it whatever you want, but it's this idea of missing the mark. So when Adam and Eve, when they commit this first sin, according to Christian theology and understanding of God, that's what theology is, understanding God and humankind, then this is where we find out kind of where we all got messed up. And here's what happens next. It says, then the man and his wife heard the sound of the Lord God as he was walking in the garden in the cool of the day. And here's what they did. It says that they hid from the Lord God among the trees in the garden. And so here's what this ancient writing tells us right here, that when we do something wrong, well, our natural tendency is to hide. It says that's what we do. We hide. We hide from ourselves. We hide from other people. We feel perhaps guilt and shame, and so we hide. We sometimes hide in the most obvious of places. And then when we get caught, what do? We say, I'm sorry, right? But people don't believe you because you're like, well, I don't know that you really mean it. You just said that because you got caught, because you kind of know what you're doing and you're hiding it and you don't want me to see it. But, since you got caught, you're like, okay, I got to confess. I guess I'm sorry. And so here's what God says next. He says, but the Lord God called to the man. And this is so big right here. This is such a big moment right here. Perhaps this is even the reason that you're here today, or the reason you're tuning in online. You might be like, I don't know really what's here for me. For some reason, I'm here. Maybe this is the one part and everything else is irrelevant to you. Understand that when Adam and Eve screwed up, God went looking for them. When Adam and Eve screwed up, and it was a pretty big thing. I mean, it was a big thing that affected all of our lives. When Adam and Eve screwed up, God went looking for them. God went looking for Adam and Eve, and guess what? God comes looking for you, and he comes looking for me. And he's not looking for us in those moments to put us over his knee and punish us. No, he actually comes looking for us because he loves us, and his heart is breaking. He's like, oh my gosh, what can I do to help right here? And the further you go into the story, you begin to see this is kind of the posture of God when all of a sudden things begin going not the way that God designed them to go. The writer goes on and says, but the Lord God called to the man and said, where are you? This is where he's like, hey, I'm looking for you. Where are you? And he knew where he was, but he asked the question anyway. And he answered, he said, I heard you were in the garden and I was afraid. And of course, God's like, whoa, you aren't even supposed to know that. What do you mean afraid? How do you know afraid? Well, I was afraid because I was naked, which meant I knew I had done something wrong and I felt shame, and so I hid. And he said, okay, well, who? Because he knew there was a who. I mean, there was a who that got involved right here. He said, who told you that you were naked? I mean, how did you figure this out? I mean, where did you come across shame and guilt? I mean, who told you to feel shame? I mean, I haven't even introduced that to you. How did you figure this out? And then he asked the question, have you eaten from the tree that I commanded you not to eat from? And, Adam, in that moment, I mean, he's like, yes, I did. I take full responsibility. I mean, yes, listen, bring to me, do with me as you will. Leave Eve out of it. She had nothing to do with this at all right? That's what Adam, well, that's actually what he was supposed to say. He didn't say that at all, right? That would have been the right answer right there. The crazy thing in the story is Adam, the very first two people in humankind, as soon as they found out, oh my gosh, we missed the mark, we sinned, we actually stepped outside the way God designed us to live, the very first thing they do is they blame somebody. It's the first thing you do. It's the first thing I tend to do. When we get caught, we blame. So here's actually what really happened. It says the man said, that the woman, God, the woman you put here, I mean, I don't know if I want her. He said, you put her here. I mean, it wasn't my choice. You put her here. She gave me some fruit from the tree, and I ate it. I mean, I probably wouldn't have done this if she wasn't here, but it's her fault. And so, why don't you and her go and figure things out and, see who's most responsible? Because between you and her, somebody, put me in this position, and I might, if I just cool off, find it within myself to forgive you later. But somehow, this is your fault. It's not my fault. I mean, it's so fascinating. I mean, Adam's pointing the fingers, hey, you did this. I'm not responsible for this. And it's so interesting because that statement was true to an extent, but it wasn't the whole truth, right? And see, here's what happens when things fall apart for us. We want to tell a story about how things fell apart, but we just don't tell the whole truth, right? We tell 90% of the truth, and then we begin to think, well, that's actually the whole truth, but we leave out the little part that perhaps is the most important part, which is our role. And here's why this, again, is so important, because, see, when we don't own our part in our history, we actually begin to lay the groundwork for undermining our future. And so we have to own that part. We have to be honest about the whole picture. And so verse 13, it goes on. It says, then the Lord God said to the woman, what is this that you have done? And the woman said, well, it was the serpent. I mean, the serpent deceived me. It was his fault. So, the blame game just keeps shifting right here, right? And again, that's true. Serpent somehow was involved. It's just not the whole story. And so again, if we don't pause in these moments and take responsibility for our part in our history, regardless of, how big or small, whenever we get to that place where we need to start over, even if it feels, somewhat insignificant, if we don't own this, then it actually undermines our future, because we can't blame our way into a better future. You can blame your way into the future, you just can't blame your way into a better future.
And so before we start over, there's a really good question that we have to ask. And this is a question that would be good for us to just think through as we think about whatever it is we're working on starting over. And that's this question: what was my part? You know, what was my part? And that will get me to the place where I say, okay, what is it that I need to own? Now, one more thought on this before we kind of move into a little exercise here. You know, here's what blame does. Blame actually sets you up for a repeat performance. It sets you up to experience exactly what you experienced the last time. And we've experienced this. You have stories, I have stories. I mean, we can see where we didn't take responsibility. I'm like, yeah, I mean, I didn't own that, and so it happened again. Just because I had experiences we talked about last week doesn't mean I'm going to be better for it, because as long as I'm not owning the experience and it's setting me up, even if it seems like it's not that big a deal, it's actually in the owning our part of the past, it actually drops the temperature in the room. It drops the temperature of your emotions. And when you drop the temperature of your emotions, you gain clarity. And you can't make great decisions when your emotions are really high. I mean, we have to stabilize. We have to create an equilibrium. But when we're blaming, and as long as we're hiding, I mean, our emotions are pretty high because we're like, oh, man, I got to shield this. I got to make sure that it's somebody else's fault. And it's only when we see clearly that we can actually get to the place where we can make better decisions, have fewer regrets, and actually have a better future. Now, Jesus said something about this. He actually said something really profound. One of his most popular, teachings ever was on the side of this mountain. They just called it what it was. They called it the Sermon on the... Yeah, look at you guys. You're sharp. You know what the name of that was. Sermon on the Mount. And if you've read this ever before, if you haven't, it's totally cool. If you have, you probably blew right past this little phrase right here, because if you're not looking for it, you just miss it. Here's one of the things he said. He said, "Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God." Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. And what he's saying right here is there's a relationship between purity and clarity. The clearer our mind is, the clearer our heart is, the more clear we can see, the more clear that our decisions are going to be. Now, I want to be really honest real quick and just kind of point out something that's somewhat tangential right here. He's not talking, if you grew up in the purity culture, the 80s, 90s, the early 2000s, and, this whole, movement with purity rings, and, if you had any kind of sexual thought or curiosity, you're like, oh, that's bad, it's going to taint you for the rest of your life. I am so sorry, because that's not what Jesus is talking about right here, all right? Because many of us, myself included, grew up in a time when it's like we felt so much shame, and oh my gosh, I've ruined my whole life because I had a bad thought, or perhaps even, did something that wasn't the most pure. And so we just carried this shame. And so there's millions of people that are now, young adults and middle-aged adults that are dealing with this. And I just want you to know that's not what Jesus is talking about right here. What Jesus is talking about is the purer your heart, meaning the cleaner your heart, the more well-intentioned your heart, the more work we've done to clean out and understand, okay, what are the things that I've actually contributed to? What's the stuff that I'm hiding? What's the stuff I've never owned up to? What's the stuff I'm afraid to admit? Because if I admit this, and I'm going to be honest, I actually have quite a bit more understanding than you might think on this. If I admit my part, I can't stay mad and enjoy being mad any longer. See, when I admit my part, it actually takes energy out of my story, and I can't be mad at you or at him or her or them, because it takes energy out of the story when I begin to own my part. And the temperature begins to drop, and we begin to see clearly, and that's why Jesus says, "Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God." And as long as you're hiding something, there's a sense that we aren't ready to make those decisions. And so, one of the things we have to ask ourselves is, is there anything I'm hiding? Is there anything I'm choosing to ignore that perhaps has played a little bigger role than I thought? Now, this is a really big deal. So I want to walk us through. I want to give you an exercise, because if we want a next time to be better than the last time, there's some things we can do. So this is going to kind of be our homework this week, and I'm going to walk us through how to do this, and then you're going to go off and do it this week. And so, and this is one of our next steps if you're following along on the connection card. So I want you to go home and get a piece of paper this week, and you can use the weekly that you got when you came in, or if you're tuning in online, you can grab a napkin or a piece of paper, whatever it might be, and on that piece of paper, I want you to draw a circle. And we're going to call this the circle of blame, all right? We're going to call this the circle of blame, and this is basically represents everything that, was contributed to needing to be in some place where I'm starting over on something. And so with whatever you're writing with, what I want you to do is I want you to just draw a slice on that circle that represents your part or your percentage of what was your part in whatever the thing was that kind of blew up or, is in need of a start over. In other words, if you're like, well, it was 50-50. I'm going to draw a line down the middle. It was half him, it was half me.
listen, nobody does that, just, so don't draw that line. I mean, nobody's like 50-50. There's no story there, right? Like, nobody wants to hear a 50-50 story. You're like, no, I want to hear a better story than that. And let's be honest, most of the time it's not 50-50. So maybe you're like, okay, well, it's 25% me, right? I mean, 75% him, but I mean, I'll own 25%, my boss, 75% him. I mean, my teacher, 75% her. I mean, my company, I mean, they just can't get it together. It's mostly them, so 25%. But again, nobody does that either. You have to be an incredible human being to admit 25% of a role in anything. All right, and so here's how it actually goes. Usually we're like, she was an idiot. I mean, I probably had like a small little sliver. I mean, maybe like 3% was me. But, it was mostly her, right? Or my company, I mean, they're just a bunch of morons. I mean, everybody there, I mean, my integrity, I may have just, had a sliver of lack of integrity in my interactions, but I mean, it's their fault. I mean, so we tend to like say, well, I mean, I just have this little piece right here, right? I mean, that's usually how it goes. But in order to make peace with our past, we have to identify that piece, because even if it's a small piece, what we discover is we start dragging that into our future. And you can't make peace with your past until you own your piece in the past. And so that's why like drawing the circle is such a big deal. And it's kind of cutesy and it's kind of fun, but it's not actually just cute. It's actually really, really transformational. Like you begin to draw in and say, okay, what's the piece that I contributed to? And we begin to realize that this actually is a part of what moves us forward. This is the thing that lets us, equips us to actually have a better future. Now, for the last couple minutes, 5 minutes or so, before we wrap up, I want to talk about the little sliver right here, all right? The little sliver that, we're all like, okay, I can own that part of it, right? Maybe it's a bigger sliver, but whatever sliver that is. I want to talk about your part for a moment. Because see, here's the thing. I've heard a lot of stories over the years and every version of every story. And I mean, I've sat with people and cried my eyes out. I've gone home to my wife and been like, gosh, I don't know, Julie, he said and she said. And my heart's just breaking for them. It sucks. I hate this situation for them. And here's something that's so important as we think about our part in the bigger picture of responsibility right here. The more painful their part is, the more energy, all right, the more passion, the more extreme your story is, the less likely you are and I am to claim any even sliver of responsibility in the situation. I've just noticed that, man, when it's a big situation, there's a lot of emotion, and it's a big story, we're just less likely to say, okay, yeah, I mean, they really did screw me over, but I did have a part to play. And regardless of how small it is, we're going to drag that little piece with us into the future if we don't own that piece of our past. So I want to give you a few examples of what I'm talking about right here. And these aren't big deals. I mean, these are like small, and some of these even are emotional. And honestly, some of them are embarrassing. And so that's, I think, sometimes why we don't want to own it, because it's just like, oh gosh, that's embarrassing. And it's one of the reasons we're resistant to just go, okay, yeah, that piece right there, that piece was, that's the part I contributed to. So let me just give you a few of these, and then we're gonna kind of wrap up. I had this feeling something wasn't right. I knew it. I had it in my gut. My friends, told me. They said, "Hey, you need to ask some questions. You need to dig into this a little bit. This doesn't seem right." But I didn't want to ask the question. All right, I had decided ahead of time what I wanted to do. All right, and I got so locked in on him. I got so locked in on her. I got so locked in on having to have that job. I ignored my conscience. I ignored my voice of reason. And yeah, I mean, I can say they contributed to it, but if I'm honest, that's the part that I played. I didn't follow my conscience. I was greedy. I just had to have it. I mean, I saw everybody else. I saw what everybody else had going on. I'm like, man, I want to be in that game. I want to upgrade my car. I need to upscale my house. And the reason, there's lots of reasons. And I can blame the economy. I can blame the fact that I didn't know I was going to lose my job. But the real reason I'm where I'm at is because I looked around at what everybody else was doing and how they seemed to all be getting ahead, and I was jealous. And that's the part that I need to own. I stayed too long. I stayed too long in that relationship because I was afraid I was going to be left all alone. I should have got out. I should have paid attention. I mean, yeah, he did have issues. She did have issues. I didn't realize that when we got involved, but I stayed too long. I mean, I had moments where I could have got out and I should have got out, but I was afraid I was going to be alone, and I stayed too long, and that was my fault because I chose to stay. It was just lust, pure and simple lust. I mean, it's embarrassing. I don't even know what else to say about it. I mean, I'm a grown up. I should have known better. It's not like I'm in puberty and I don't know how to navigate, these things. I mean, but if I'm honest, I knew the right thing to do, but I didn't do it. And yeah, she had issues, and she enticed me. He enticed me. That's their part, but I could have exercised self-control. I could have said no, but I didn't, and so that's my part. I didn't do my best. I didn't do my best. I think my professor had it in for me. It just seemed from the first class, everybody else seemed to be doing fine. I just felt like I was on the bad end of that stick. My boss, the people I work with, I just don't think they ever liked me. But if I'm honest, I goofed around. I didn't show up on time. I didn't follow through. If I'm honest, I didn't do my best. I should have called an Uber. It's true. I can make all the excuses as to why I stayed, why I was there, why I stayed longer than I should have, but the truth is I could have got out, but I didn't, and it's my fault. I've got to own that. I should have said, nah, honey, I'm good. I could have another, but I probably shouldn't. It's like a good country song right there. But I didn't. I could have got out, but I didn't. That's my part. And so we just have to say, okay, what's my piece? Maybe it's not the whole pie, but what's my piece? Because to make peace with your past, to make sure that you don't drag that into the future, we have to own our piece of the past. Sometimes it's embarrassing, it's emotional, even difficult. I'm going to warn you, it's going to take the energy out of your story. Sometimes, when you own it, you do though begin to gain clarity because the emotions go down. You begin to go, okay, I'm actually making better decisions for the future. So here's what I want us to do. I want us to go home and I want us to do this week. All right, and if you're sitting at home right now, this is something, even before the day is up, I encourage you to draw this circle, because if you wait till tomorrow, you're going to be like, oh man, they almost got me to take this step, but understand, this is for your good, this isn't for me, this isn't for us. What I can tell you is this works. I use this, and there's something powerful about owning. And so, for some of us, you're in your second marriage, and it's already feeling a bit like the first, and so you need to draw the circle. For others of us, you're in dating relationship number, like you have lost count. You're not even sure. And you're like, I just don't know what's wrong with all these people, but you're the common denominator in all of those moments. And so, again, maybe you need to draw the circle and say, okay, what do I need to learn about my past? Or perhaps you got like your dream job and you're at work and you're like, man, this is just where I'd always hoped to be, but it's just feeling a lot like the last time when things didn't go well. You need to draw the circle. Owning our part in the past is what helps the next time be different than the last time. What role did I play? And I promise you, what's going to happen when you begin just reflecting and say, okay, this is my part, and you begin putting pen to paper, you're going to find that, you might even discover, okay, well, there was also something else. And then you might even have another thing that comes up, and you begin to realize maybe there's some things that God is showing me here. And there's a freedom that begins to happen here. And then the second thing I want to just encourage you to think about for this week is we want to send you some encouragement this week. So as you do this and as you spend a little time reflecting on this and thinking about the past, it's kind of heavy. We want to send you some text this week, every day over the next week for 5 days of just reminding you of some of God's promises about what He believes about you and your future and how He actually gives us tools to move past the past. And so if you would like to receive those, you don't have to do this, but if you'd like to receive those starting Monday, you can just text the keyword own it. No spaces in there, just own it. And you can text it to 317-834-7373. And beginning Monday, you'll just get something in your text tray, Monday morning, Tuesday morning, throughout the week that just reminds you that, hey, God has something new in front of you. God's actually taking you to new places. He wants you to grow, and when we follow His ways, it's amazing how we actually step into some pretty amazing and spectacular things. And so if you want to receive that, just text own it to 317-834-7373. And again, the more you write down, the more the energy is going to come down, and you're going to begin to see that the next time actually can be better than the last time. But it doesn't happen because we want it. It happens because we work at it and because we take this step. And part of taking the next step is actually owning it. All right, so I'm going to pray for us. I want us to go ahead and stand. We're going to sing a song here, and I want to pray for us first because, man, you have an opportunity right here. In fact, this song talks about how God's way is better. When we begin to say, okay, God, I'm going to follow your way on this. I'm going to break some of my traditions. Maybe you've never owned something fully, and this is the first time you're going to break your patterns and say, okay, I'm going to do something different, and I'm going to create some new traditions. I'm going to break my patterns so I can create perhaps even a better future. And so I want to pray for us toward that end. God, thank you for the chance to talk about relevant things, meaningful things. If we're not in the middle of a start over right now, we have things coming to our mind. If we're in the midst of one right now, we might be just getting some tools right now that we're realizing, gosh, this actually could make a difference. And God, we know that when it's from you, it does, because you understand how we're designed to work and live, and you know what kind of freedom comes when we take steps to owning our past and moving into a new future. And so God, I just pray that you give us the courage this week to draw a circle, to spend some time reflecting, to invite you in, and to break perhaps some of our patterns that we have experienced in the past of hiding, of maybe, ignoring and allowing ourselves to grow in the midst of this. And God, we know that you want that. And so God, this is exciting. This is an exciting moment where we get to step into something new. So I just pray that your Spirit would encourage us this week as we do this.
Oh, your way is better. Your way is better. Oh, shake up the ground of all my tradition. Break down the walls of all my religion. Your way is better. Oh, your way is better. Shake up the ground of all my tradition. Break down the walls of all my religion. Your way is better. Oh, your way is better. Sing that with me. Shake up the ground of all my tradition. Break down the walls of all my religion. Your way is better. Your way is better. Shake up the ground of all my tradition. Break down the walls of all my religion. Your way is better. Oh, your way is better. Here is where I lay it down, every burden, every crown. This is my surrender. This is my surrender. Here is where I lay it down, every lie and every down. This is my surrender. And I will make room for you to do whatever you want, to do whatever you want. And I will make room for you to do whatever you want, to do whatever you want. do whatever you want, to do whatever you want to. Shake up the ground of all our tradition, break down the walls of all our religion. Your way is better. Your way is better. Shake up the ground of all our tradition, break down the walls of all our religion. Your way is better. Your way is better. Shake up the ground of all our tradition, break down the walls of all our religion. Your way is better. Your way is better. Shake up the ground of all our tradition, break down the walls of all our religion. Your way is to do whatever you want to do whatever you want to, and I will make room for you to do whatever you want to do whatever you want to. Here is where I lay it down. You are all I'm chasing now. This is my surrender. This is my surrender. Here is where I lay it down. You are all I'm chasing now. This is my surrender. This is my surrender. Light breaking through all the lies with the truth. Hear the sound of the wind. Let the roar of heaven begin. Can't stay silent, can't stay still when you show up in power, glory revealed. No, I can't stay silent, can't stay still when you feel the fire, feel the ground shake. Heaven and rain, heaven and rain. There's freedom in this place. Every heart awakened, everything is changing now. Heaven and rain. Broken hearts on command will find you in the end. All the shame and the fear run away when you're here. Can't stay silent, can't stay still when you show up in power, glory revealed. Oh, I can't stay silent, can't stay still when I feel the fire.
right, man, so glad you joined us today. I hope you're encouraged as a result of your time with us today, and you see you have a Heavenly Father who wants to invade your life with all of His grace and goodness, and that He wants to bring you a new hope and a new freedom and take you to new places. So, if there's something going on in your life today that you would like someone to pray with you on, just simply text the keyword "need prayer" to 317-834-7373, and a member of our team will be in touch with you this week. Now, if you're a giver here at Crosspoint, I just want to say thank you. Personally, I want to thank you for your generosity to the Joy Box. And if you're not a giver and you'd like to become one, you can donate through this QR code or through the Give button. And know that all of your gifts are a part of helping people experience all the goodness, all the hope, the fresh starts, the new beginnings, the start over moments that God brings through this place each and every week, including this online broadcast. So I just want to say thank you. Thanks for joining us today. We hope to see you next time for part 4 of Starting Over.